Ladies and gentlemen, from the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace and Justice, Deacon Gerald Celente.
Hello, this is Deacon Celente, the deacon of the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace and Justice. Tomorrow is March 13th. Go back 2 years ago, Black Friday, March 13th. The then President Donald Trump declared a national emergency to fight the COVID war. That's right. You look at the information coming out of the mouths of the politicians and the media. They called it a war. These are facts. Week after week, we're fighting the war. We're fighting the war. Aren't wars lovely? They're so beautiful. Slaughtering millions, costing trillions. Wars are wonderful. That's what they sell the people. War? That should be a word that should be pushed out of the language. Look what they bring. Death and destruction. And so too has the COVID war. It has killed the lives and livelihoods of millions and millions of people. And how many have the vaccines killed? The data's there or the data isn't there. I hear different numbers, don't know what to believe. But here's what I do know. I do know that to give a child a vaccination, to me, by the data, makes absolutely no sense. You have in America, about 74 million people between the ages of 1 to 17. Over a course of 2 years, about 700 died. That's 350 people a year out of 74 million dying. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 61% were overweight or obese. And 94% of the general population had 2.6 pre-existing comorbidities. But yet they're forcing the vaccinations. And the vaccinations, and you've seen the people, from America's head of the Department of Defense to the Prime Minister of Canada to the Queen of England, fully vaxxed, and they got COVID. We provide religious vaccine exemptions because we are totally opposed for anyone to tell us what we should put into our bodies, our God-given rights and our God-given bodies. So now the vaccine mandates are wearing down. Austria, which demanded that people get vaccinated, and if they didn't, they get a $4,000 fine a year, backing off. The mandates to go into restaurants, backing off. Will it come back? Yesterday, Pfizer plans to submit data to the Food and Drug Administration for a fourth COVID shot soon, and is working on a vaccine that protects all coronavirus variants, said Albert Bourla, that's the head of Pfizer. Quote, I think we're going to submit to FDA significant progress of data about the need for a fourth dose. And they need to make their own conclusions, of course, and the CDC also. It is clear that there is a need in an environment of Omicron to boost the immune response. We are making a vaccine that covers Omicron and all other variants. There are so much trials that are going on right now, and a lot of them will start reading by the end of the month. So they're selling a fourth shot, and they're going to be selling a yearly shot. This is pure hypocrisy. This man had declared that the vaccine would have a 96% efficacy rate. Oh, and then new variants came. Oh, now another new variant. And of course, according to the Israeli Health Ministry, it has around a 39%. And it's not helping young people, according to the data. But that's where it's going with this. So, Pfizer is working on a vaccine that prevents infection in addition to preventing hospitalization, severe cases, blah, 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 blah. We can have a vaccine. So there we go. More vaccines. And will there be more mandates? Well, if the people comply, it will be. If they unite under the umbrella for freedom, peace, and justice, it won't be. You put in your body what you wish. And speaking of which, with the war going on in Russia about putting into your body and who's dying from the virus, 42% of Americans are obese. 70% are overweight. Why? Well, some people have health conditions that, you can't help it. But you are what you eat. So with the war in Russia going on, this is the headline from Wednesday's New York Times. Russia loses fast foods, long symbols of the West. When McDonald's opened its doors in Moscow's Pushkin Square in 1990, it was welcomed by more than 30,000 Russians who happily waited hours in line. Happily waited? How do you know they were happily waiting hours in line? If you're waiting online, are you happy about it? Anyway, eager to spend a sizable chunk of their daily wages for a taste of America. Isn't that wonderful? That has become a taste of America. Junk food. This isn't fast food. It's junk food. You are what you eat. You are what you put into your body. And if you inject foreign substances or eat substances that the foreigners up in Russia weren't eating, then you know what you're going to happen to your body. They're making this sound like the Russians are losing out by Kentucky Fried Chicken, by Coca-Cola, by Pepsi-Cola, by McDonald's and Burger King not selling foods and drinks that are harmful to your health if you want to stay healthy. McDonald's transformed Russia. Now it's abandoning the country. That's CNN. Abandoning the country. And then there's the war. As we said, you either negotiate for peace or rest in peace. There's no talk about peace. Not a peep. Not a peep from the Pope. Nothing. Nothing. You have a senator in America by the name of Mitt Romney. Again, I mentioned this. He's a Mormon. The Latter-day Saints. Very Latter-day. Because he's so pro-war. What Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ? Not the Jesus Christ that I'm a warrior for, the Prince of Peace. No talk of peace, only hatred and fear. Headline: Hospital hit as attacks on civilians grow. Russia strikes maternity center. Many trapped in besieged cities. Terrible. I am totally opposed to this war. The Russians could have gone about it in a more peaceful way, I believe. But these headlines, and the United States ambassador calling Putin a war criminal, and others calling him a war criminal. Yes, but it's the pot calling the kettle black. Is not the United States and NATO war criminals, what they did to Yugoslavia and the people they killed? Is not the United States and NATO war criminals for the Afghan war? Is the United States and NATO not war criminals for the Iraq war? War is based on lies. Is the United States and NATO not war criminals for what they did to Libya? You remember America's Nobel Peace Prize winner, President Barack Obama. His words: Assad has to go, he said of Syria's President Assad. And Americans and their allies have killed over 600,000 Syrian civilians. Gaddafi has to go. The NATO war in Libya. Those are his words, along with Hillary Clinton, Samantha Power, Susan Rice. They say that if only women were in charge. Victoria Nuland, one of the people behind the coup of President Yanukovych in Ukraine back in 2014. It doesn't make any difference if it's women or men, black, white, green, yellow, creed, color. It makes no difference. Good and bad comes in all of them. But the bad are now in charge. They robbed us of our freedom and liberty in the COVID war. And as this war ramps up, we will lose it all in our lives. The way these trends are moving, we are in the beginning of World War III if we don't unite for peace, freedom, and justice. It's as simple as that. I mention this also, how they show this. As the United States slaughtered people, over 1 million in Iraq, they didn't have headlines like this, that the United States was slaughtering people. No. Only one side. That's all we're getting. They don't show pictures of the destruction of Libya or Syria. They'll say a story that, they killed a Russian agent in the UK, or tried to. They tried to poison him. That becomes the big news. They say that a humanitarian crisis is happening in Ukraine, and it is. But not a peep about the humanitarian crisis caused by the United States, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, and other people selling weapons to destroy the Houthis in Yemen. The worst humanitarian crisis on earth. On earth. Not a peep. Not a peep. Only Ukraine. And they keep championing up more war talk. They have this fellow that's playing the president over there, an entertainer, comedian, Zelensky, who in his comedy show played the president of Ukraine and then became it, speaking to the United Kingdom House of Commons. And, of course, through Zoom, quote, "We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight until the end at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land, whatever it costs," echoing some of Winston Churchill's words. The House of Commons cheered Zelensky and gave him a standing ovation. Whatever the cost, they're losing. They're not going to beat the Russians. Why keep the killing going? And the United States just announced that they're taking $3.6 billion of We the People's money and bringing it to the Ukraine, which will ramp up the war. While people can't even make their ends meet, as inflation skyrockets, almost $14 billion going to Ukraine to escalate the war, as other nations keep sending in more military armaments to keep the fight going. No one's speaking about peace that I know of, other than the universal church of freedom, peace, and justice. And when they talk about Winston Churchill, this is the man who, along with the United States, overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran, Mossadegh, in 1953, and he's quoted as saying, "We need their oil." That's right. We need their oil, because under the new president, Mossadegh, they nationalized the oil that was allegedly owned by Anglo-Iranian Oil, better known today as BP, and Standard Oil, better known today as ExxonMobil. As I've said often, do you think America would have invaded Iraq, Syria, Libya, and doing what they're doing in Iran if their major export was broccoli? These are criminal acts. And the person that they brought in to take Mossadegh out was a Nazi-loving man, the Shah of Iran. That, of course, is according to Richard Lance Keeble. In 1953, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, through Operation Ajax and British intelligence through Operation Boot, helped plan the coup. This culminated on August 19th, when Mossadegh was ousted and the Shah of Iran, who had been a chief partisan of Nazi interests in Persia during the Second World War, was restored. Brought to you by Winston Churchill, who everybody applauds. Winston Churchill was not very well favorable of a man called Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, in India. Churchill had strong views on the man now widely respected for his work, this in the BBC, in advocating self-determination for India. Again, the British Empire that had no business being in India, war crimes took over the nation for many, many decades. Quote, "It is alarming and nauseating to see Mr. Gandhi, a seditious Middle Temple lawyer, now posing as a fakir, F-A-K-I-R, striding half naked up the steps of the vice-regal palace," Churchill said in his anti-colonist adversary. Anti-colonist adversary, isn't that a nice word? To get the invaders out of your country, you're an anti-colonist. Quote, "Gandhi should not be released on the account of a mere threat of fasting," Churchill told the cabinet on another occasion. "We should be rid of a bad man and an enemy of the empire if he died." He was a threat to Churchill's vision of the British Empire. Imagine that. This is the Churchill that they're quoting. The Churchill who said, "I cannot understand," this is going on, the Kurds against the Afghans, and again, into the valley of death rode the 600, trying to take over Afghanistan, the British people. "I cannot understand the squeamishes about use of gas," he wrote in a memo during his role as Minister for War. Isn't that nice? And air in 1919. "I am strongly in favor of using poison gas against," you know who they are? "Uncivilized tribes. It is also important to note that he was in favor of using mustard gas against the Ottoman troops in World War I." So that is who Mr. Zelensky is being admired as following. If we do not unite for freedom, peace, and justice, we will die in war. So please do what you can to unite with us. Donate what you can. Mind, body, spirit, and dollars and cents. Thank you. Peace.